Hello everyone, welcome to our new series DevTalks by MTB. This series will consist of a couple of episodes, and today we're going to talk about the clean code and why is it so important for developers, for development itself. I'm today with Sebastian.
Hello.
Sebastian is an experienced developer, experienced in technologies like Node.js. He's also very experienced in the backend development, but he also have a lot of experience in the front technologies like Angular. And my name is David. I'm co-founder of Bootstrap. So let's start with this very generic question. Why do we actually need a clean code? Because some people may actually think, everyone talks about it, right? This kind of obvious to everyone, but on the other hand, when you think of it, and I think each of developers at the certain level, at certain point of time, might ask this question to himself. And to be honest, I was also one of them. So when I was studying at the University of Technology, I also, of course, knew about these best practices. But when you are doing a project for one of the classes, you may ask yourself, why do you actually need to follow all these guidelines, all these best practices? Because you have this kind of feeling that this is slowing down your development, right? I mean, those best practices sometimes require some extra effort, which probably pays back, but you don't know this at this very moment. So let's start with this question. Why do we actually need a clean code?
Well, of course, it's a very common question, and I also was the one who was asking it, but the first thing to note is that we write code for humans in the first place. It's not like we write the code for computers to be able for them to operate. We write the code for humans. Computers operate on bits, zeros and ones.
That's a good one, because I remind myself that a lot of my colleagues from university, they were saying like, well, come on, compilers going to understand it anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly. Compilers will understand that anyway, but humans won't understand that in any way. Humans like clean things. They like to understand everything. So as humans, we should write code for humans and make them understand what we are trying to say to computer, right? Because if computers were have consciousness and could speak to each other, they definitely wouldn't talk in JavaScript or PHP. They would speak in zeros and ones, I think. So the high-level programming languages are there for us to be able to clearly speak to computer, and this language is for humans to be able to talk to computer.
Yeah, and so I think that's really good argument, right? I mean, because if people claim that computer is going to understand it anyway, well, then you could always ask this kind of person, like, okay, so why don't you write in assembler, right? Or zero and one.
Exactly.
So, okay, so now we know why is it actually important. And of course, this is just one of the reasons, right? And we're going to show you more in coming minutes. But Sebastian, you are very often work with young developers, right? So you are teaching them, you are doing code review. So could you tell us if there is any kind of pattern? Are there any common mistakes? Of course, the young developers, the junior developers, they are doing a lot of mistakes. This is normal, right? Pretty obvious when you try to learn something. But is there a list of top 3 most common mistakes done by young developers?
I would say definitely there is. I mean, when I do code reviews, I always stumble upon some very repetitive things. Like the most common, I think, is just bad formatting. Like the junior developers very often do not follow conventions. they try to write code in a way which is clean for them, right? But it's very common to in projects, in real world projects, to have like this set of rules which you follow to make the code clean. And it's very common for junior developers to just not follow this convention and write code in their own way, which just creates mess. And I always point it out, like, please fix this, please follow the rules.
That's funny thing, right? Because many times we hear, and actually probably some of us might also do the same in the past, but many times we hear from young developers that, well, I mean, I don't need to keep this code clean because I'm the only one who's gonna work on it, right? And this is most obviously not true.
Yeah, it's definitely not true.
And what is the most funniest in this situation is that very often these people think like, okay, I do understand it right now, but then when they come back after like 3 months or half a year, they barely understand what they were having in mind.
And I think it's pretty common to all, like, juniors do not always, I'm not telling everyone, but most of them do not think about the future. They are focused on now, and they write code to be able to understand it now. So they do not think like, will I be able to understand this code in a month? Or will someone else understand what I meant? They usually don't do that.
Of course, this is obviously understandable because when you're a junior, when you come to company and you get your first task, you are so focused on how to solve this task, right? How to solve this issue itself, which you're just try to fix it as soon as possible and try to show that you do understand and this magic formula to solve it, so that you might forget about other things like the clean code. Okay, so one thing is writing the messy code, but anything in particular?
The most common thing is just formatting and naming conventions. Usually when we speak about clean code, we, among others, we mean code formatting and naming conventions. These are like two most important things when you think about clean code. And sadly, these are two most common things that young developers do not know and just don't follow these rules. But hey, everyone does that, right? So we just need to learn that. We always should adapt the conventions which are existing conventions in the projects. Like, so we should never force our own conventions just because we like them, because it just creates mess.
So you need to follow like the best practices because they are there for a reason, right? Someone created them, and someone probably spent a lot of time and consideration, perhaps brainstorming to come up with some ideas. So it's a good idea to start with these guidelines.
Yeah. So if you don't have any convention yet in your project, then you should definitely sit together with your whole team and create one, because if you won't have any set of rules to follow, everyone will follow his own rules, and it will be just a big mess, and everyone will have to be focused on his own part of the system because he will be the only one who understands it.
Okay.
So,
but convention seems like a very generic thing, right? I mean, can we be more specific? Can you give us some examples of the mistakes which are done by developers?
Yeah, like, I think the most common is just to create very short names for variables and functions. Like for example, the task is to create some function to calculate a tax, for example, and you should have variables named like tax value, I don't know, maybe a currency or something like that. So you should call it like this, right? Tax, currency, a value, result. But what I stumble upon very often is just one letter variables or two letter variables, which are very not clean, very not clear. And when you read it, you don't really know what this variable holds. And it's the same for functions. When you call function like do magic, which I had a situation where I was doing code review and there was this method called do magic, and I was like, what does it do? What magic does it do? So yeah, it shouldn't be called like that, definitely. The names should be descriptive enough for us to be able to tell what this function does and what this variable holds. So definitely do magic isn't a good name because magic, we don't understand magic.
There is no magic in IT, right? The
Yeah.
first IT rule, which we should all share. Okay, so you said that basically people are using two short variables like A, B, C, D, whatever letters come to your mind. How about two long variables? Is it also an issue or not?
Like it depends. Like definitely the name shouldn't be too long, like the whole phrase, because come on, it isn't a book. It's just a code, or not just. My advice would be try picking names as if you were Googling something. Try to use short but meaningful keywords rather than whole phrases or two-letter words, right? If you want to search for something, you don't usually type two letters or like the whole sentence. You just pick those short, meaningful keywords to make the work easier for search engine, right? So I think it's a very good thing to take into consideration when you are thinking about name.
Okay, but there are some exceptions to that rule, right?
Yeah, definitely. We all know that when we are writing code, there are situations where we just don't want to use too long names, even if it's short, one word. Like for example, you are doing a for loop or while loop. You don't want to usually you don't want to call the iterator variable like index or iterator. You just call it I, and everyone knows why it's there, what does it do, and it's very common convention. Like I don't think it's written somewhere that these variables should be named like that, but everyone does that, and everyone knows what does it do. If you have nested loops, you just call it starting from I, J, K. Never call it L because it looks similar to 1. Just skip it. The next letter is M. Also, there are situations where you are writing like a very known algorithm like binary search, and the implementation is known for everyone, so you shouldn't pay too much attention and shouldn't care too much about naming those variables because everyone knows what this algorithm do, and
or should know
or should,
in the future, right?
Yeah, should know. So there are situations when you shouldn't care too much, but if you'd use a binary search but modify it a little bit, so then you should definitely name those your custom variables for everyone else who reads your code.
Okay, so to summarize, I mean, this naming convention is important because of at least few reasons, right? I mean, first of all, if you're gonna come back to your code after some time, then you will, well, more probably understand, right? Because this is something what experienced developers know already. When you have to come back to jump into the code which you wrote like 2 years back, sometimes it's and the algorithm was very complex and specific. Then it's very difficult to understand, and it doesn't make it easier if you use like short abbreviation like ABC. That's the one thing. The second thing is that as a software developer, most probably you will jump into someone else's code. So you don't wanna be in this situation when you jump into someone's code, and you first of all you don't really understand the business logic behind it, and second of all you don't really understand what certain function does, and you have to re-engineer code trying to understand what author actually meant. And I think there's like one or two very generic rule which we share with our young developers, and I think one of them comes from the clean code.
Yeah, you're talking about the Boy Scout rule.
Yeah.
I've read it in Uncle Bob's book, Clean Code, and it states that always leave the campground cleaner than you found it. And I think it's very, very good advice, because if you work on a file and you see a mess in a code and you know what it does, but it's just a mess, just fix it. Make everyone else's life easier and just fix it. It won't cost you a lot of time. If it does, maybe you should write a task in Trello or something. But if it's not too much time, you should definitely go for it and fix it, because it will help everyone else, and you including.
Yeah, and let's well, this also should be obvious to everyone that this is a team play, right? I mean, we usually don't work as a single developer. Usually we work in teams. So if everyone were having the same attitude and the same rule, then the work would be much easier to us. And it can be like that, right? I mean, this is knowing from our experience. So don't hesitate to tell others these rules, and if you need some extra time to fix someone else's code, just notify it to the product owner, to the scrum master, to the manager, and saying that, hey, I just fixed my part, but I see that the whole file is actually a mess, so can I fix it, because it's going to help us in the future. Okay, so the naming convention is the one thing, as you said, which is the most common. What else? I mean, code formatting in general, right? And except for the code formatting, which consists of bad naming conventions, bad variables, and basically the messy code. What else is there?
Yeah, I also see very much comments in the code, especially when I do code reviews. And I'm not telling comments are always bad, but I divide the comments in like 3 categories. The first one is just unnecessary comments. The second one is doc comments, which are
Could you explain what are the comments to our listeners?
Doc comments are a type of comments that are just for documenting purposes. They're generally auto-generated, but you can write them on your own. You will see.
Can you give an example to the
function parameters and return types and what does the function do?
So to rephrase, like this function takes these arguments, right? Like string.
Yes, they are usually a code block starting with slash asterisk and then with asterisk slash. And the first paragraph of this comment is just the function description. And then you have arguments description one by one, and at the end you have return type. What does the function return? Also, you can see some C links when if function uses someone else's code or just a common algorithm, you can just link it up in the comment. So yeah, these are good comments because you can auto-generate documentation from these comments. So I don't hate those comments, let's say like this. And the third group is commented code, which is very, very, very bad, I think, because we have version control systems, right? So we don't actually need to comment out code. If some block of code is not necessary anymore, we can just remove it, and that's it. Commented out code does not run anyway, so we just create mess. You have to scroll through this and read the actual code which runs.
So what are bad comments and why they are actually bad?
Yeah, so the first category I mentioned was just unnecessary comments, which I see them as just bad comments. And these are types of comments that usually appear when formatting is bad or naming is bad. So as you can see, if you follow the best practices and just those naming conventions, you wouldn't actually need those bad comments. And what they do is just to describe what the code does, right? So we have some messy piece of code which we don't fully understand, but in general we know what does it do. So we put a comment above and say this function calculates attacks. And there's a missing phrase, but I don't know how, but I know it doesn't. So yeah, I think the code should be self-explanatory. So you should, instead of writing this comment, you should fix the code and make it clean, make it easily understandable by others and by yourself in the future.
So instead of writing the comments like this code is doing magic, just call it doing magic.
Yeah, exactly. So
and let me jump into this one. I mean, and the other reason why they are not these comments are actually bad is well, I'm not sure whether it's actually because of the comments itself, or rather because of the developers. But I guess you agree with me that very often they become obsolete like very quickly. So they change. So we change the code, but we do not change we do not update comments. So we end up in a situation when the comment is saying something totally different than the code actually does.
Yeah, definitely. And it also happens because of placing the comment, because we can place a comment in two places, above the line or in the same line. So if we place above the line, there is a very high probability that this comment will move up or down without the line it talks about. So we have, for example, we have a line of code at line number 9. So we place a comment at line number 8. And it's fine, it describes what it does, it's super cool. But the day after, we need to define some variable above the line, which we added on line 9. And and this variable is used in line 9. So following the best practices, we define the variable above the line where it's used. And what happens? The comment moves one line up. So now it looks like it describes the variable we just created. And this is not true. So as you said, the comment just becomes obsolete and redundant, I think. So another way to put the comment is just to put it on the line where the code it refers to is. So for example, we write code at line 9. So we put the short comment, if it's very necessary, in the same line. So we don't need to think of it when we change the code. Yeah.
To add on that, I mean, it's also a very common case that every now and then when we copy some piece of code because we use it in the past and we don't want to write it again, so we just like copy paste. It's also, I think, very common mistakes from the young developers that they just copy, but not the entire piece of code, including the comments. So you end up with little monsters which are like half comments or they're like orphaned comments.
Yeah, so it's definitely true. You just read the file and suddenly you stumble upon a comment, and it seems like it's there without the reason, but you are not really sure because maybe someone knows what does it say. So yeah. These are type of comments I see as unnecessary because you should make the code clean enough to be able to understand it, and then those comments are not necessary. Especially, I just reminded, I have seen, like, not very often, but I've seen in code reviews situations where someone writes the history comments at the top of the file, like who edited it, when, what changed, and come on, we have version control system. That's the main reason why we need them.
Maybe it's a credits part, right? People like to feel,
Yeah, but we can easily check it in the repository if someone needs it. So I don't understand, really, I don't understand why.
You also mentioned about the full comment and a lot of codes, and then we jump into repositories. So could you like describe very shortly why? Because that's something which you see also very often, right? So you have a file which is like 300 of lines, but about 100 or 200 lines are just commented out just in case, right? So why people do that, and yeah.
This just in case code is really annoying me. People sometimes do this. Just what you said. They write code, and it suddenly seems like our previous version isn't necessary now. So we just comment it out and write a new version below it, and we push it to our repository. So. And when you ask them why did you left your code, it's not running now, it's just invalid, you shouldn't have it. They're just like, oh, just in case it will be necessary in the future, so we just remove my new version and remove comments, and we have my code. Like,
well, I think we can understand it, right? I mean, if you're a developer and without much. You are not experienced yet, so you're lacking like the self-confidence. So you don't want to mess up. So you are something new, but you want to play it safe. So dear young developers, if you are listening to us, like don't be scared. If you are using the control version system, you can easily remove this code and get back to this one just in case, and for sure. That's gonna look better to your senior colleagues, which are checking this code for you if you play it this way. So
yeah, I think it's also because of those people, young developers. They are usually very attached to their code, so they don't want to remove it. They just like, this is my code. It's running. Yeah, but. My advice would be, do not be attached to your code. It's just a code. Don't be afraid to remove it, because the code evolves always. So it's not like you have written it and it will be there for 25 years. It will definitely
not going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so to summarize, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. So what we discussed today is that there are like 2 or 3 most common mistakes done by young developers. Are in general the code formatting, and what we mean by that is a formatting itself. So like using too many lines, not enough lines, not writing too much in one line, or splitting it to too many lines instead of keeping this as short as possible but still readable. Secondly, using bad naming convention, both for variables as well as function names, so being either too descriptive or not descriptive enough. We talk about the scout rule, right, or camp rule, that every time you see that something is wrong with the code, not only the one which you are working at, but also nearby in the same file or in the same function, then it's very wise to fix also this code and leave it clean. And the other big topic, big chunk which we discuss are comments. So we distinguish three categories of comments. So the one are unnecessary comments, so which shouldn't be there. So assuming that your code is clean, is written in the right way using the correct naming convention, most of the developers won't have any issue trying to understand it, trying to read it. So you don't need to add an extra comments because it's just an extra overhead which might become obsolete very often. The second category of comments are those doc comments. So they are helpful because if you jump into the code, you can easily see what this function does and what parameters it takes and what will be the output. So this is especially important when you come to work with more complex structure in object-oriented programming, for example, when we talk about classes and objects. And we have very bad comments,
Yeah.
which drives Sebastian crazy. So those comments are the whole piece of code which are commented out just in case. So dear developers, dear young developers, dear wannabe developers, well, we want you to remember two things. First of all, well, it's not wrong. It's not even wrong to do it. I mean, everyone was doing this, and this is kind of natural way of when you gain progress, when you start learning how to program. But if you are listening to this podcast, to this video, just make use of knowledge people like Sebastian, who are already experienced and who's been doing this for years by now. And just don't make those mistakes, and that's gonna lift your development and speed up it much higher, much faster than if you were trying to learn that by yourself. Because for sure you're gonna learn. If you're gonna make those mistakes, for sure you're gonna come back to your code after half a year and you're gonna understand it. For sure you're gonna realize that you are doing too many comments or you left too many commented out code which is unnecessary now. That's it for now. Thank you, Sebastian, for sharing your knowledge.
Thanks.
And if you like this video, just subscribe, and because we're gonna create much more content on that. So just to give you a hint of the next videos. Those are the most common mistakes, but they are not the only ones. So the next episode will be also about other things, other mistakes which are commonly done by not only young developers but also the early one. So thanks for watching and take care.